Welcome to the entire plot of Kingdom of Ash Part 2. Today we're going to be covering chapters 9 through 20, and I'm going to include this disclaimer at the beginning of every single Kingdom of Ash video. This is a darker book. There's a lot of elements in this book surrounding torture, both physical and emotional and psychological. So you have been warned. I'm going to do my best to soften it, but I'm also not going to do you the disservice of downplaying it. So I'll be as sensitive yet still as straightforward as possible. Also, one more thing before we start. YouTube does have a new feature called Hype, and you can hype up to 3 videos a week, but it's just a way to signal to YouTube your favorite smaller creators, and hopefully YouTube will take that information and make those smaller creators less small. So if I'm a smaller YouTube creator that you like, then you can hype up this video and it would mean the world to me. Let's start off chapter 9 in a very depressing chapter, and this is going to be in Aelin's POV as Fenris is coming back into the torture room that Aelin's being kept in his Fae form, actually. So this is our first time seeing Fenris in his Fae form since they've been back with Maeve. And he tells her that he has come to take the glass shards out of her knees, but then after he's done, he has to go back to his wolf form. And there's really no good, sensitive way to say this, because in my opinion, this is one of the worst things that we've seen Maeve do. Remember at the end of part 1, Maeve had Connell, Fenris's twin brother, unalive himself in front of Fenris. Well, this is where we learn that Fenris was then forced to be intimate with Maeve afterwards, against his will. So there you go. Like I said, Maeve is a very disturbing villain. She's very dark. She makes me sick. She's a very twisted individual. Moving on. And as Fenris is taking the glass out of her knees, she just absolutely breaks down. And Fenris is trying to comfort her because he thinks it's from the physical pain of taking the glass shards out of her knees. However, it's because it's finally settling in for her for the first time that Rowan is not coming to rescue her. And of course, we know that's not true. We know he's working so hard and he is on his way, but she is fully convinced after what Maeve told her about Rowan being spotted in Terrasen with Aelin, aka Lysandra, in Aelin's form. She firmly believes that, and she now thinks that there's no hope and this is just her life now. Chapter 9 in Lysandra's POV as the battle is beginning, and it is just slaughter left and right. It's brutal. It's not an easy battle, to say the least, but their lines are holding. Basically, they met Erewhon's Legion as they were marching north from Eldris, and they met 5,000 Valg foot soldiers. Okay, so no Ilkin, no witches, no witch towers, just 5,000 foot soldiers. We also learned that she prefers to fight in her snow leopard form in specially commissioned plated armor for her snow leopard form, commissioned specifically by Ren Alsbrook. So remember I told you in part 1, he's kind of got the hots for Lysandra a little bit. This is another great example of Ren showing that to Lysandra, okay? He got special plated armor commissioned to fit her snow leopard form. I'm sorry, but that's romantic to me. We're gonna jump to Aedion's POV now at the conclusion of the battle, and it's not even an hour later when Aedion is in his tent with other leaders from the war, basically planning their next steps. Well, they also are talking a little bit about how things went. This is where we learned that we lost 350 men, and honestly, it's a bit of relief because we only lost that many fighting 5,000 Valg foot soldiers, but obviously 3,050 individuals is a lot to lose. So they're, mourning those people. They're saying it's a shame that we lost those men. However, we performed a lot better than we thought we would in this battle. While discussing next steps, it's mentioned that Dara wanted them to go back up north, remember, to fight more in Orinth. But Aedion, however, as well as the allies that are loyal to Aelin, are all thinking that it'd actually be better to push south. And sure enough, this is confirmed when a messenger comes in with a letter from Darrow. And you're like, hold on, I thought the battle ended an hour ago. And he's like, up north, how in the world did he write a message? He gave the messenger 2 letters. One for if they lost the battle and one for if they won the battle, to be delivered to Aedion as soon as the battle was over. So Darrow was not taking any chances. So the messenger hands him the letter that he was supposed to give him if they won the battle, and it's a summons north to see him. So not just Aedion, but the entire army now has to go north. And Aedion is like, dude, we just were in battle. We lost 350 men. These men are tired. We have a lot of injured, and you want us to travel to meet you? However, Aedion knows exactly what this is. This is Darrow fighting for his life to keep control over this army. Because let's be so for real, they are not here for Darrow. And then Darrow knows it. Something interesting though here is the way that the messenger kind of delivers the message. Usually messengers, they just like hand it over and they just kind of, go off in silence and wait for a response. But this messenger's a little vocal and he seems a little opinionated. And Aedion's intrigued by him. Sure enough, this messenger introduces himself as Nox from Parenth. Guys, Nox. Do you remember Nox from literally book 1? He was the thief that befriended Celaena and she warned him to run away and he ran away in the night. This is that Nox. And sure enough, when he ran away in the night, he went to Terrasen and he has been serving and aiding in the rebellion. So crazy full circle moment. Celaena didn't even realize what she was saving him for. Aedion doesn't really have a choice, so he's like, okay, fine, we'll go up north to see Darrow, but I'm going to be spending the rest of my night. Before he even bathes, before he does anything, he is going to go around and check on all of the men who fought in this battle and check on the injured and make sure that everyone's okay and that morales are not hurt by the fact that they have to go up north immediately. But this is when Lysandra approaches him, okay? She offers to fly all the way to Darrow tonight to basically say they can't come and the army needs time to recover. I think that's a great idea. However, Aedion does not want Lysandra's help. He is still mad at her. And even more mad because she wasn't in the tent when all that was discussed, which means that she kind of shifted into like a smaller creature or like a bug or something to overhear the conversation. So he's like, you can't just like shift and come and sit in on meetings that you were not invited to. She then offers to shift into Aelin's form, thinking that maybe it would boost some of the army's morale to see the Queen of Terrasen. However, he says that her not helping at all in that battle and then showing up at the very end after they've won the battle would be kind of like taking the glory, and it actually might make soldiers resent her more than like her. So she's like, okay, fine, just tell me what to do. She's like, I want to be helpful, so help me help you. Like, what's the best thing I can do right now? Because she doesn't understand battle strategies like he does. Like, yeah, she is fighting in her snow leopard form and she's arguably one of the strongest warriors on the battlefield right now, but she doesn't, like, she was raised to be a courtesan. She doesn't understand the politics of a war. And he just snaps back at her being like, stop trying to help me. Like, I don't need or want your help, which is crazy because he does need her help. Okay, let's be so for real. Lysandra's response is perfect though. She says, we have enough enemies as it is, but if you truly wish to make me one of them as well, that's fine. I don't regret what I did, nor will I. So once again, she is doubling down that she did the right thing. And his response ticks me off. He tells her to go slither off somewhere else. And because we're in Aedion's POV, we know that he instantly regrets saying it, especially after seeing like how hurt she is by what he says, but he is mad, so he's not gonna let her know that he regrets what he said. And sure enough, she does just that. She walks away and she decides to go back to her tent then. She's not putting up with him. Chapter 11, this is going to be in Chaol's POV as he's talking to Sartok and Nesrin about what they found while flying over Fenharrow. And through their interrogations of the Valg, they learned that there are 10,000 foot soldiers, Valg foot soldiers. So this is not the 5,000 that just fought Lysandra and Aedion. This is another 10,000 that are heading to Annielle. Okay, guys, Annielle is where Chaol was born and raised. It was the home he was meant to inherit. He was Lord of Annielle. He was supposed to inherit that from his father, but he rejected it so that he could serve Dorian in Rifthold. Annielle does not have the armies, nor does his father possess the actual heart to truly prioritize and protect his citizens. So Chaol instantly knows, like, if there are 10,000 foot soldiers headed for Annielle, like, Annielle's gonna be in ruins. Like, there's no way. Chaol has a choice in this moment. So he asks himself a very important question. He says, WWDD, what would Dorian do? And he decides that Dorian would rescue Annielle before heading to Terrasen, so that is exactly what we're gonna do. Chaol and Yrene are going to fly to Annielle on a ruck to give his father a warning and a heads up, and then all the other rucks are going to head there shortly after them, and hopefully the armies shortly after that to help protect Annielle. Chapter 12. This is in Aelin's POV, and she's back in her box, completely broken. Like, she's hit a breaking point, really, and she's in her box, and she's thinking about how, like, this is just her life now. Like, she's never gonna know life outside of being tormented by Maeve. And Karen comes into the room, and he has been able to pick up on the fact that she's, like, really at her breaking point right now, and so he's just dragging his dagger along the outside of the box, kind of like taunting her and teasing her. However, Aelin is not bothered by Karen. She actually doesn't notice Karen at all, because there is a presence in the iron box, okay? And this presence is her mother. So her mother, in some form, shows up next to her inside of this box and asks, "Fireheart, why do you cry?" Aelin just responds, "Because I am lost and I do not know the way." Her mother's response is, "You have been very brave for so very long, but you must be brave a little while longer, my Fireheart. You must be brave a little while longer, and remember, it is the strength of your heart that matters. No matter where you are, no matter how far this will lead you home. It is the strength of this that matters, Aelin. You are my daughter. You were born of two mighty bloodlines. That strength flows through you, lives in you. You do not yield." And then her mother disappears, but Aelin really locks in on the "you do not yield." And it becomes like this obsessive, repetitive thought that she will not yield in this moment. And she just decides, "I will not yield." And she starts banging on the top of the iron box. And she has this repetitive, basically mantra of just, "You do not yield. I will not yield." And she keeps banging on this box. She hears Karen going crazy outside of the box, knowing that something has to be happening. And then sure enough, through the like vents in the side of the iron box, they end up smoking her out with Gloriella and making her pass out. Which, by the way, total side note, it's the same stuff she was drugged with in Crown of Midnight. She wakes up after like an unknown amount of time, but she is strapped to the table that she's usually tortured on. But she looks over to her iron box and she sees that the top lid of this iron box is entirely warped and was only a couple more hits away from being totally blown off its hinges. I will remind you, this box is made of iron, and she did that. Now let's jump to Rowan's POV, because this part's crazy. They're on their way to Acadia, right? That's where they decided maybe Aelin is, when he feels a surge of power down the bond, and he knows it's Aelin, but before it is snuffed out and stopped, which, as you can probably guess, is when she got knocked out by the Gloriella. Before that surge is snuffed out down the bond, he could tell that it was coming from Dorian. Okay, so we now know that Aelin is actually in Dorian. So the cadre immediately know, all right, forget Acadia, we're heading to Dorian, but we need to come up with a plan to get Maeve out of Dorian. So they start cooking up a plan on how they're gonna draw Maeve out so they can get into Aelin. Chapter 13, this is in Manon's POV as they are coming up on the Croatian witch camp that the Stygian spider told them that they would find. So sure enough, her and her 13 put their iron teeth and their claws away. They need to seem as not intimidating as possible. And they walk up to the camp with their hands up. Naturally, they're received with a crazy ton of panic, but Manon speaks up and says that they mean them no harm. However, no one believes this coming from the mouth of the white demon. Okay, that's what they call Manon. I'll remind you, she's literally famous for hunting down and killing Croatian witches. So she's now walking into a Croatian witch camp and being like, "I mean you no harm." How do you think that's gonna go? Not very well. Dorian, however, speaks up as the king of Aelin, and the Croatian witches are definitely very interested in hearing what Dorian has to say. So Dorian asks them if they're willing to stand down and not attack his friends, the 13. However, they say that they don't do anything without orders from Glennis, okay? And then this is where we meet Glennis, who is the leader of this camp, and she also just happens to be no one other than the great-grandmother of Manon. Chapter 14, Glennis does order all the witches to stand down and put their weapons down, and she invites Manon and the 13 and Dorian and Serene, the Stygian spider, with them into the camp. It's only moments though, they hardly get any talking in before warning alarms are sounded because the Iron Teeth witches have found Manon and the 13. Everyone jumps straight to action, especially Manon and the 13. And some of the other Crocian witches in the camp also help, but it's basically led by Manon and the 13. Like, they do most of the work, but they're met by 2 Yellowlegs covens. Honestly, it's like a whole mini battle, but all that really matters and all that you really need to know is that Manon ends up reigning victorious. It was actually a great example of her leadership skills. So she really got to put those on display. However, after this battle, one of the witches accuses Manon of like setting it up like on purpose to show off her skills and try to make them trust her. And Manon is like, no. Even Glennis asked Manon, she was like, is this true? Did you do this? Did you lead them here so that you could show off your skills to us and try to make us trust you? And Manon's like, no, I wouldn't do that. Like, they've been hunting us down. I'm not surprised that they just found us now. Glennis at least believes it. However, Dorian's hand was on the pommel of Damaris, and Damaris went ice cold, meaning that Manon did lie, and Manon did in fact intentionally lead the Yellowlegs covens there. Also, this is like such a side thing, but during the battle, man, I don't think there's any sensitive way to relay this information. During the battle, one of the witches beheaded one of the Yellowleg witches, and they're up in the air on wyverns, so it like fell down onto the ground, conveniently fell at the feet of Dorian, who, mind you, still has severe PTSD from watching his girlfriend get beheaded in front of him by his father. So that triggered a lot for him. And, you know, we already knew Dorian was struggling and having a hard time, but let's just say this moment intensified that and aggravated it. So Dorian is really just going through it. He's in a very dark place these days. Chapter 15, this is in Manon's POV. She doesn't know how Dorian knows that she's lying, but she can tell that he knows that she's lying based on like the way that he kind of reacted to what she said and the way that he's interacting with her now. But she had to do it. You know, she needed the Yellowlegs to trust her, and she didn't have time to like wait and earn their trust. She had to kind of expedite the process. So it's about dinner time, and her and the 13 are sitting down at the fire with Glennis as they're eating and talking, and it's really just Glennis fleshing out her history to her in detail, but it's really not necessary detail. Honestly, it's not really much more than what we've already discussed in the past. So something new that we do learn is that Manon actually has some cousins at this camp. One of them specifically has been the most vocal about how they shouldn't trust Manon and how she thinks Manon is there for all the wrong reasons and that no one should trust her. So yeah, lovely for her. Manon loves that. She literally at one point in front of all the other witches says, "You are not our queen. We will never fly with you." Okay, so we know where she stands. So Manon's really gonna have to work on some of her cousins. Let's jump to Dorian's POV as he leaves the lovely dinner conversation about Manon's heritage to go check on Serene in the tent, who is still in her human form, so he decides he's going to ask her some questions about shifting. She claims it is as simple as clearing your mind and just imagining what you want, and then you'll become that thing. So Dorian decides in this moment he'll start easy. He's gonna change his eyes to the color brown, you know, like Chaol's. And then it makes him think about Chaol and how he feels like he let Chaol down, and he doesn't know where Chaol is, and he's worried about Chaol, and he starts spiraling, thinking about his best friend Chaol, and Serene's like, dude, like, you're not clearing your mind. But we know that Dorian's been in a dark place recently, so honestly, are we that surprised that he is struggling to shift because he can't clear his mind? No. So then he uses his magic hands. Remember we talked in Empire of Storms that a lot of times his magic kind of manifests as like these shadow hands. Well, he reaches out with his magic shadow hands and he tries to feel for her shape-shifting magic, and he's hoping that like if he can get the sensation of the shifting magic in her, then he can find it in himself and tap into it that way, because that's just what's been working for him. However, when he goes to reach out and feel for the shape-shifting magic, he feels a different kind of magic. He feels Valg magic. Remember in Tower of Dawn, we learned that Stygian spiders and Katankui spiders are actually Valg creatures. Well, Dorian was not there for any of that, and he actually hasn't really interacted with anyone who's figured that out either. So this is Dorian's first time realizing that Stygian spiders are Valg creatures. Shortly after sensing the Valg magic, though, he does finally get his hands on the shape-shifting magic, and he can even sense how it was stolen, and wonders if that means that it can be stolen again. She then takes this moment to speak up and remind him that she still plans to kill Manon, but if he will bargain with her, then she'll make sure that he ends up okay when she finally gets her revenge on Manon. But he feels Damaris go ice cold, which means that she just lied to him, and not only does she plan to kill Manon, but she plans to kill him as well, and he hates her in that moment because not only is she a Valg creature, but she just lied to him saying like, bargain with me and I'll save your life, when she totally plans to kill him. So he just kills her right then and there with his magic hands. And while he does, he steals the shape-shifting magic that she had in her. This is the moment where Dorian for sure is like, all right, I officially have this shifting ability. I'm going to master it, and then I'm going to use it as a way to sneak into Morath and find the third word key. So he needs to figure out how to shift well and successfully, and then he needs to find a way to sneak away from Manon and the 13. Later that night, however, Manon comes into the tent that they share, and she pieces together that he killed the spider, and she's fine with it. She's like, so I'm fine with you for killing the spider. Are you fine with me for lying to the Crocian witches about leading the Yellowlegs witches to their camp? And he just says, you know what, like, we're at a time of war, desperate times call for desperate measures, and like, yeah, maybe an old me would have criticized you, but another part of me can't really sit around and wait for these witches to trust you, so like, we gotta get them to come up north to Terrasen ASAP. Then something crazy happens. Manon asks Dorian for advice. Now this is crazy because Manon has always been in a very strong leadership position, and so for her to like kind of put like her ego aside a little bit and admit to Dorian that she's like really out of her ballpark here is kind of impressive and shows a lot of growth from Manon. But she asks him about the more political side of being a leader because she was trained to be like a warrior leader and to lead in battle. She wasn't exactly taught how to lead like in negotiation. In short, he tells her that she needs to find out what they need in order to rally behind her, because if you think about it, like, she's desperate right now and they have no reason to give up anything to come fight for her. Like, she needs to find out what they want and find a way to give them what they want. He uses the example of how Aelin knew that the Mycenians needed to see the Mycenian sea dragon in order to, you know, come to her aid, and instead of waiting around for a Mycenian sea dragon to show up after so many years, she just decided to create a Mycenian sea dragon. So he's like, obviously you can't create a Mycenian sea dragon and make the Crocian witches want to follow you into war. However, you might just have to think a little bit outside of the box and kind of force something in order to make them trust you and want to follow you into battle. Manon doesn't even know where to start, and Dorian suggests that Glennis, your great-grandmother, she seems pretty interested in helping you. Why don't you ask her what it would take for the witches to follow you? So later that night, after Dorian falls asleep, Manon slips out of the tent to go to Glennis's tent and asks her just that. Glennis's response is, only a Crocian queen may ignite the flame of war to summon every witch from her hearth. Every Crocian family has a hearth that moves with them from each camp to home we make. The fires never extinguish. When a Crocian queen summons her people to war, a flame is taken from the royal hearth and passed to each hearth, one camp and village to the other. The arrival of flame is a summons that only a true Crocian queen can make. So Manon's like, great, where's this eternal fire so that I can start the process? And Glennis is like, well, no, you have to be accepted as queen first before you can access the fire. And she's like, okay, great. How do I get people to accept me as queen? Glennis says it's basically up to her to figure it out. But if she wants to join them, they're heading to Eelway to help the remaining people there after Eelway was burned. And Manon does not like this at all because that means they're heading south, which is even further from Terrasen. She wants to at least start heading north so that when she does convince them to follow her into battle, they're closer to the actual battle she wants them to follow her to. However, if she's going to work on them and make them trust her, she's gonna have to go south with them, which is gonna work out great for Dorian because he wants to head further south, so that works out just fine. Chapter 16, this one's in Aedion's POV, as we are finally at the meeting with Darrow. It took an entire day of traveling with the whole army with him, okay? Now, in this meeting, Darrow's all high and mighty, ordering Aedion around as if he's king of Terrasen, which is so stinking annoying because he's not even close. He's literally just a lord of Terrasen, okay? He's the king of nothing. And basically just says, like, we're gonna be meeting, all of the lords and the allies can come too, and we're gonna meet at dawn. And Aedion, maybe it's just because it took a hit to his pride, but he goes straight to Lysandra after that and says, I think it's about time for Aelin to make an appearance. Because no one can put Darrow in his place quite like Aelin can. So we're actually going to flash forward to this exact meeting, and it's basically one giant argument between literally everyone as to whether or not we should go north like Darrow wants, or if we should push south like Aedion and the rest of the allies think we should. Darrow does not like the fact that Aelin is here at this meeting and that she's pushing to go south and that all of her allies are also agreeing with her. And he's like, why haven't I seen your fire recently? We know why. It's because it's not actually Aelin. But thankfully, Ansel of Briarcliff is like, trust me, she is saving that up to give Erewhon, like, the fire show of his life. And Aelin's like, haha, yeah, that's it. That's totally what I'm doing. I'm saving up the magic. But trust me, when it comes, it'll be huge. It'll be crazy. Ugh, we'll see how long that lasts. And then Darrow also mentions that he doesn't believe that the witch towers are real, which is crazy because it's literally just because Aedion mentions that it's one of the reasons why it's a bad idea to go north to Orinth, because there's more to be destroyed in Orinth with these witch towers just like blasting anything in their path. But Darrow's like, well, we only heard about those witch towers from Manon, and I don't trust Manon and the 13. I think that they were like a plant to kind of throw you guys off and make you think they're allies, but they're not, and we shouldn't trust them. He doesn't have any really good reason for this. It's just, you know, he has to contradict Aelin. It's what he's good at. It's what he loves. So this is when it comes down to a vote. Like, should we go south or go north? And the funny thing is that Darrow is actually very outnumbered because of the allies. They all think we should go south, as well as 2 of the 6 lords of Terrasen who are present. However, Darrow in this moment is like, well, since this is our war, I think only the lords should get a vote. So naturally then it's 4-2. So then they win the vote to go up north, which is so stupid and pathetic, and I absolutely hate it, and I hate this man. But, you know, he's gonna do what he does best. He then turns to Aelin's allies and then reminds them that, you know, you made promises to Aelin, not to Terrasen. So if you really strongly disagree, you can just go. Like, you don't have to stay, which is one, so offensive to the allies that we definitely need. But he's more saying this to be offensive to Aelin, basically saying you didn't make promises to Terrasen or the Queen of Terrasen, you made them to this girl. So he's basically implying that like Aelin has no pull in Terrasen, so you didn't actually make any promises with Terrasen, just the silly girl. So like if you want to leave, you can, that's fine. Which is so ridiculous because he needs them and he knows he needs them, but he's so determined to just not let Aelin play any successful part in this war. Like, honestly, he's acting like he would rather lose this war than win this war and it be Aelin's fault that they won the war. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't want Aelin to get the glory for winning the war. He'd rather lose it. That's kind of how he's acting. He's not saying that. That's me very much projecting based on how he's acting. However, in solidarity, all of the allies then say, no, we're pledging our allegiance to Terrasen. However, they are not saying this to Darrow. They say it to Aelin. They say, no, when we pledged our allegiance to you, we pledged our allegiance to Terrasen. So them basically saying, we recognize you as the Queen of Terrasen, and we will serve you as if you are the queen, because technically you are, and you should be. I love it. It's like a political slap to Darrow's face, which frankly he deserves, and also a way for them to say, just a reminder, we do fight for her and not you. So any aid that you were getting from us is not actually for you. But shortly after this lovely display, a messenger walks into the room to deliver a message, and the messenger turns directly to Aelin, aka Lysandra, okay, and says Erewhon sends his regards before attacking her with Valg dark magic. Chapter 17, if you are wondering how in the world a Valg soldier got deep into the heart of the camp and into this tent, is because this Valg does not have a wordstone ring or a wordstone collar. It has a wordstone heart. So this is another tricky thing that we have to look out for in a new way that, Erewhon's gotten creative. However, when this Valg lashed out with its magic, thankfully it did not hurt Lysandra, who's playing the part as Aelin, to a horrible extent. However, it did cut a gash in her arm. And sure enough, the Valg could smell the blood and that it was shifter blood and immediately goes into this trance. Remember, there was like the trance the one shifter went into on the ship in Empire of Storms, okay? This trance is like a way for them to like send a beacon to Erewhon and send a message to Erewhon. In this moment, Lysandra's like, shoot, this person is telling Erewhon right now that Aelin's not actually here and that I'm a shifter. There's going to be huge implications for that, okay? Erewhon did not know that Maeve has Aelin. Erewhon does not know that Terrasen is not being protected by Aelin, but now he knows. However, the second Aelin realizes this, she orders for the Valg messenger to be killed instantly. So it's like killed mid-message. I will also note, okay, that all of the allies got in front of Aelin, okay, and went to guard Aelin and went to the front of the tent to fight this Valg creature. All of the lords of Terrasen were cowering in the back of the tent, okay? What does that tell you? It should tell you a lot. And believe it or not, those are the men who get to make all of the decisions. That ticks me off. Anyways, so Aedion and Lysandra go off after the meeting to assess the damage, basically being like, Erewhon knows that Aelin is not here, and a Valg creature easily made it to the heart of our camp. And now, to make things even worse, they have to go up north, because, only the lords could vote, so of course they were outnumbered, and now they have to go north. However, Aedion tells Lysandra not to worry about the going up north bit at least, because he has a plan. Turns out scheming runs in the family, Aedion. It's not just Aelin, okay? Remember how Darrow emphasized that the armies, he didn't hold them to any promises to Terrasen? Because they serve Aelin, not Terrasen. That means that the allies don't need to actually follow the orders to go up north. So all of the allies and the Bane, which is loyal to Aedion, by the way, I think you know where this is going, but we'll get there in a sec. Lysandra goes back to her tent after Aedion tells her the plan for the night, right? And sure enough, that is when she runs into Nox. So he just says, so did that Valg just sniff out the fact that you weren't actually Aelin and you're a shifter? And she just looks at him and she's like, no one else is supposed to know. He's not supposed to know. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, you can cut the crap. I know you're not Aelin or Selena Sardothian because you don't recognize me. Remember? Because this is the guy from the first book, Throne of Glass. Aelin would have recognized Nox and she didn't. So that's how he kind of figured out that it wasn't actually Aelin. Nox then shares how he is loyal to Aelin and he owes Selena a life debt, and he's really only serving Darrow until the queen was able to return. And he's like, now that the queen wants to return, he's like, this is clearly a part of a plan. He's like, I don't need to know what the plan is, but if you playing the role of Aelin is part of Aelin's plan, then I will go along with it and I will be your personal spy or messenger or whatever you need, which is very sweet. And so she was like, okay, I'll give you a mission, but like you could be considered treasonous for doing it. So are you really sure that you want to help? And he was like, absolutely. What do you need? So that night, Nox goes on the mission that Lysandra gives him. He serves the wine in Darrow's tent to all the lords of Terrasen, and he puts a little sleeping potion, if you will, in all of their wine, so that the next morning when all the lords of Terrasen wake up, their tents are in the middle of nowhere because the entire army camp around them packed up and headed south while they were sleeping. Chapter 18. This is Chaol's POV as him and Yrene are landing in Annielle on a rug. He announces his arrival to one of the guards and they are escorted to his father. Now, I will just let you know that the keep is in horrible condition. We actually learn that Annielle is one of the richest territories in Rifthold, other than like obviously Aderlin. But Daddy Westfall is a bit of a Scrooge, if you will. Okay, he basically does not spend any money on his citizens or on keeping his keep nice. He literally just like keeps all the treasures buried below. Also, another little side note is that as Chaol is being escorted to his father, he realizes that there are no signs of his little brother or his mother. Very interesting. We'll discuss that in a future part. But Chaol finally gets to his father, and his father is surprised to see him walking because last he heard his son was crippled. Chaol then takes that moment to introduce the woman who healed him, but also his wife. And Lord Westfall Westfall, Father Westfall, if you will, decides to take this moment to express his disappointment in the fact that Yrene Towers is not noble. She's not of noble birth. But then he makes a comment about like, but I guess marrying a healer is better than marrying an assassin, basically indicating when him and Selena were together. And he goes, but I guess that assassin ended up being a queen, so maybe you did fumble the bag after all by not marrying her. Dude, I hate this man. He's so horrible. I can't stand him. Chaol, so done. He's like, he's not even gonna tolerate any of this. So he just says, look, the reason why I'm here is that Erewhon has armies coming to Annielle, and you either need to fight and prepare to fight, or evacuate all the people. His father, of course, refuses to listen to him because, why should he listen to him? You know, he's never cared about Annielle, otherwise he wouldn't have left and gone to Aelin and followed Dorian. So why should he care and come rescue Annielle now? Whatever. Yrene, my queen, she steps up and she decides that she's gonna confront Mr. Westfall. She says, don't you talk to him like that. I am the heir apparent to the healer on high of the Tor Sesme. I came at your son's behest back to the lands of my birth to help in this war, along with 200 healers from the Tor itself. Your son spent the last several months forging an alliance with the Khaganate, and now the Khagan's armies sail to this continent to save your people. So while you sit there in your miserable keep tossing insults at him, know that he has done what no other could do, and if your city survives, it is because of him and not you. Snaps for Yrene. That was beautiful. Absolutely loved every second of that. Every word. Wouldn't have changed a thing. That was beautiful. Chaol then throws out a suggestion because he's like, I know you don't have the armies to fight Erewhon's men. Don't worry. We have some coming, a little bit delayed, but they'll be here. I think you should ask for aid from the men of the Fang Mountains. Instantly, his father's ticked off by the suggestion. He's like, no, they're nomads. They're no good. His father refers to them as savage. And we basically learned that, like, the people of Annielle and the men of the White Fang Mountains have, like, been tormenting each other for years. However, Chaol points out that apparently Erewhon, through what he's been doing at Morath, has been kind of pushing the men of the White Fang Mountains out of the White Fang Mountains. So he's like, hey, like, you guys have a common enemy. Maybe take advantage of that and maybe put your pride away and ask them for some help because frankly, he needs it. And Chaol just says, like, listen, I've done everything I can do. Now you either prepare the city for an evacuation and to fight in this battle, or the downfall of Annielle is going to be entirely in your hands. Chapter 19, Chaol and Yrene get to their guest room for the night and bond over how insufferable of a man Chaol's father is. And also, neither of them is sure whether or not he's actually gonna do it. Like, is he gonna evacuate the women and children? Is he gonna rally his armies to fight in this war? They're not really sure. However, the next morning, the wrecks arrive. And while they're settling in a nice big grassy area in front of a huge dam, that's important. We'll talk more about that dam later. But there's this big grassy plain with a gigantic dam in front of it. And we get a little bit of the history, like they've thought about breaking it down before, but if they did, it would totally like wipe out Annielle, okay? So that's why they haven't done it. So there's this giant dam off to the side. And all the wrecks are in the grass in front of this dam. And Chaol meets up with Sartaq and Nesryn, and they report to him that sure enough, Erewhon's army is about 3 to 4 days out. Thankfully though, as of right now, it looks like they are only Valg foot soldiers, but they're almost here. Chapter 20. Of course, we're going to finish this on a depressing note because it is the book Kingdom of Ash, and we're going to end this in Aelin's POV, and she is living in what seems to be an alternate world. Basically, she just celebrated her 20th birthday and she's just come to Dorinel to visit her great aunt and meet her mate Rowan. Life is beautiful, and now she's sitting with her great aunt Maeve as she's telling her fun little fairy stories. It's the life Aelin probably would have had if Terrasen hadn't been defeated by Rifthold, if you think about it. And also if Aelin's mother didn't know better than to keep her away from Maeve. However, one of these stories that her great aunt Maeve is telling her is the story of the queen who walked through worlds. This story is actually Maeve's story, and I'm not going to reread it to you because it's literally almost exactly the same exact story that the Karankui told us in Tower of Dawn. But I will say hearing this story told from Maeve's POV makes it a lot more eerie. But something that I think is very telling about the way that Maeve thinks about herself and her situation is when Aelin asks, she left? She just left her own world permanently? And Maeve's response is, it had never been her world. Not really. She had been born to rule others. So this is like some deep-seated entitlement, okay? Maeve truly believes that, like, she should dominate the world. Like, she was born to just rule other worlds. And that's crazy. So anyways, Maeve tells her whole story, and she gets to the part where the brothers created the keys and the word gate and how they were going to use the gate to destroy all the other worlds. She says she wished to find them only so she might possess the strength to banish any enemies, banish her husband's youngest brother back to his realm, to protect her new lovely world. It was all she ever wanted, to dwell in peace without the shadow of her past haunting her. So listen to the language about how she's framing this story, okay? She is manipulating the story in such a disturbing way to the point where she is literally like the victim of her story, okay? And it's to make Aelin sympathize with her. Aelin then asks if the queen found the keys. After all, she seems really clever and ambitious, so surely she found the keys, right? And she was able to protect her world. However, Maeve says, where do you think she found the keys, Aelin? And Aelin kind of stops to think, and while she's thinking, she looks down and she sees her wrist. And for a split second, she was like, oh, I kind of expected to see chains on my wrist. And then she stops and she's like, I'm a princess of Terrasen. Why would there be chains on my wrist? Like something there, like she almost like flashes back to reality for a split second. And she's like, wait, something about this doesn't feel right. And then in that moment, because Rowan is in the room as well, she looks at Rowan and she sees the tattoos all over Rowan's side of his face. And she's like, why do I feel like there's a story behind those tattoos that's actually really morbid and really sad? Like, she's starting to click together that this isn't real, okay? She's starting to realize that she is in some sort of magically induced trance and that everything around her is fake. It's not real. It was literally something to give Aelin a sense of security and safety so that she might accidentally tell Maeve where the word keys are hidden. But the second that Maeve realizes that Aelin is aware that she's in some sort of magically induced dream, Maeve decides to turn it into a moment to psychologically torture Aelin and makes Aelin watch her kill Rowan. This woman has no chill. So Aelin snaps awake, and sure enough, she is chained down to the table, and Maeve is standing over her. And Maeve says, do you know what pains me most, Aelin? Is that you believe I'm the villain in all of this. I have no doubt that your mate, or Elena, or even Brandon himself filled your head with lies about what I'll do with the keys. I meant what I said. I like this world. I do not wish to destroy it, only improve it. Imagine a realm where there is no hunger and no pain. Isn't that what you and your cohorts are fighting for? A better world? Man, this is like next level gaslighting and manipulation. It's insane. So she's basically doing everything she can to trick Aelin into telling her where the keys are. Even if it's not through trust, maybe it's through the idea that whatever Maeve will do them can't possibly be worse than what Erewhon's gonna do with them. So she can tell Maeve how to get them so that Erewhon can't get them, right? Because maybe that's the better, lesser of two evils, you know? However, Aelin does not yield. Of course she doesn't. Of course she doesn't. She stays strong and refuses to tell Maeve anything. And then Maeve says, okay, that's fine. Just wanted to let you know I'm going to have to head out though, because some Valg princes have been spotted on the shores of Dorinel. She's basically going to hunt them down and destroy them, but she's going to steal one of the collars and put it on Aelin, and she's going to find a way with her manipulation magic to rewire the collar so that whoever wears it serves her, and she's going to put it on Aelin. So she's basically, because she can't get Aelin to swear the blood oath, she's gonna force her into subservience with a wordstone collar. But she says, don't worry, although I'm gonna be gone for a little bit, Karen is gonna keep you entertained while I'm away. Maeve in that moment leaves, and a bunch of healers come in to heal Aelin because she had been tortured right before going into that dream and she hadn't been healed from that yet. So they heal her, and meanwhile, while she's being healed, Fenris looks at her and with their little blinking code asks her if she's okay, to which she just responds, no. Like, an eternity of this is one thing, an eternity of a wordstone collar might just be worse. Aelin eventually, from all the pain and exhaustion of being healed, passes out, but is later woken up by Cairn, who in a panic informs her that she is being moved because with Erewhon's men moving in, they need to move her to a more secure location. This is horrible because Rowan finally felt her down the bond that she was in Doranel, and now he's on his way to Doranel, and now she is being moved again. We are gonna find out, obviously, the implications of all of this, but for right now, you're just gonna have to wait until part 3 because that is officially the end of part 2. If you are not caught up yet, you absolutely need to. This is the best place to do it. This is the entire plot playlist, and then of course you should subscribe so you get notified whenever I post a brand new entire plot episode.